But anyway, welcome. I'm glad everyone's here. Today we're going to talk about the Exodus, which is chapter 3 out of the Moses book. Here's some of the things we're going to talk about just to keep in mind as we go through. So we're going to explore the role of Moses, the unlikely prophet, in participating in God's redemptive act of the Exodus. We're going to examine the plagues that God visited on Egypt. We're going to look at parallels to our own redemption story, maybe with our own plague story, reflecting on the ways that we might respond to God's word as revealed in the story of Exodus. So you remember Moses in Midian was told by God to go back to Egypt because everyone there who wanted to kill you has died. So remember, Moses fled because the Pharaoh wanted to kill him because he had killed the slave master. So Moses, after he asked permission from his wife and his father-in-law to leave the herd, and puts his wife on a donkey, and they go back to the land of Egypt with his children. And he had, I think, different places in scriptures showed at least 2, I think. And the Lord also told Moses, "Now you will see what I'll do to Pharaoh. In fact, he'll be so eager to let them go that he'll drive them out of his land by force." So that's the prelude. Let's start with an opening prayer. Eternal God, we remember your enduring promise to be with us always. Be with us now as we continue our encounter with the story of Moses. Open our eyes to our own part of the continuing story of your loving way with humankind. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I thought I turned that off. Okay. Okay, we'll get started with the video. And let me get that set up to go here.
In our last session, we left Moses in the Sinai, having heard from God at the burning bush, and God calling him to get going, I'm sending you. So now he's made his way back to the land of Goshen, made his way back to what I believe was the capital city of Ramses, where the Israelite slaves have been building the city, making their mud bricks, and he's gone to confront Pharaoh. I want to say just a word about who this Pharaoh was. So scholars debate which Pharaoh, actually scholars debate when it was that Moses lived. Did he live in the 1400s? Did he live in the 1300s? Did he live in the 1200s? Most mainline scholars that I've read date him in the 1200s. And so the story just makes some sense when it's dated in the 1200s. It's not materially important to the story and to what we take away from it, but it does make for a great telling. And it seems as though the biblical author might have intended for us to read this story as taking place during the reign of Ramses II. Now, as we think about Ramses II, his fingerprints are all over Egypt. He was building and reigning in a golden era for Egypt, and he was building more building projects than any other pharaoh. In fact, when you go across Egypt, you'll find more evidence of Ramses II than any other pharaoh. You'll see his buildings, you'll see his statue, you'll see his cartouche all over the place. Just south of Cairo proper is the archaeological park dedicated to the city of Memphis. Memphis was one of the ancient capitals of Egypt. And there you'll find a massive statue that was commissioned by Ramses II. And that massive statue probably stood 40 to 45 feet tall. Now it lies on its back It's about 33 feet remain of the statue. And what it reminds me of, you find statues like this all over Egypt. It reminds me of something about this man, Pharaoh Ramses II. And I think of some of the dictators of the last 100 years, whether it's Saddam Hussein or Stalin or others, who insist on having large pictures of themselves all over the place, statues of themselves everywhere. It tells you something about the person. And this is what I think of when I see the Colossus of Ramses II at Memphis. By the way, when you're in the Valley of the Kings near Thebes, you have a chance to actually visit Ramses II's grave. But you can do one better than that. If you go to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, you can actually see the man himself. There he lies in state. You see even his hair, it's a reddened color because the chemicals that were used in the embalming. His fingernails carefully manicured. This is not some fictional figure. Now, Moses comes and confronts Ramses II in the capital city of Ramses. And I want to take you there to see some of the ruins that may very well have been built by the Israelites themselves. The capital city that was built by Ramessu, or Ramses II, it was actually started by his grandfather, Ramses I. Seti I continued to build on the city, and Ramessu, or Ramses II, completed the city. It became this major capital in the north in Egypt. So here we enter the temple that was dedicated by Ramses II to the god Ammon. You'll see Ramses' statue is here, another statue here, and this is the entrance to this temple. Now, as we walk through it, this temple is huge, it's massive. And as you come through, as far as you can see all the way through here were the temple courts. It culminated in, at the very end, what would have been the Holy of Holies. As we think of the temple in Jerusalem, we think of this idea of the Holy of Holies. And as we come through, I want to show you just a few of the things that you'll see in this temple. Let's take a look. So this is something very interesting. This may have been a part of the temple to the god Ammon. And what you find here is Ramses II, Ramessu II. And he's standing, preparing to punish a Hittite. So this is a foreigner, a man from another country, preparing to punish him as an offering to the god. And this is the god Ammon here. This is the main god of the Egyptian pantheon. And so this gives you a sense, this is an offering that he's making to the god Ammon as he's punishing the Hittite. This may have been a part of the temple that Ramses II had created, and again, capturing this idea of punishing the foreigner who's here as an offering to the god Ammon. Let's continue to explore. So this is something fascinating that you find in the remains of the temple. You find once more Ramses II, and here he's offering to the god Ammon the goddess Justice. So he is the purveyor of justice. He's offering as a sacrifice justice. We find his cartouche, this is his given name, and this is his coronation name. And so as Moses and Aaron are coming, they're demanding justice for the Israelites. This is what Ramses II is offering to the god Ammon. And so they're approaching him, demanding the very thing that he's purporting to offer in this temple. So Moses and Aaron approach Pharaoh and ask him to release the Israelites, to allow them to go into the wilderness to worship for 3 days. That's all they asked to begin with. Just 3 days to go into the wilderness to worship. And of course he says, no, that's not going to happen. And he says, if they have so much time that they can go and worship in the wilderness, they can be making more bricks, or they can be doing more work. And so as a sort of punishment for even asking, he now said, we're no longer going to supply the straw with the mud for you to make the bricks. You've got to go get the straw yourselves and start making the bricks. This created great pain for the Israelites, the idea that they had to continue to make the same number of bricks, but were no longer able to have the straw provided. So here you can find an example of a mud brick. This entire wall is mud brick construction, mud mixed with straw, formed into bricks, dried by the sun, and then formed into these walls that are still standing here 3,000 years after they were constructed. And as you see these, you can see the mud and the straw mixed together. These bricks are over 3,000 years old. They were used to build walls. They were used to build houses. They were used to build the later pyramids prior to the time of Moses. And they were used to build the capital city of Ramses. Millions upon millions of these bricks all over the land. And you can't help but hold them in your hands and think, I wonder if the Israelite slaves built these particular bricks, these mud bricks. And so once more, Moses and Aaron approach God, ask God, what should we do? And then that ultimately results in God saying, I want you to go back and tell Pharaoh that unless he's willing to let the Israelites go free, plagues are coming. Something horrible is coming. And ultimately, of course, this was a battle between the God of Moses and the gods of Egypt. As we think of those 10 plagues, at least some scholars believe that the plagues were a sort of satirical way of pronouncing judgment upon Egypt's gods and demonstrating that the God of Israel, the God of Moses, was far more powerful than the gods of Egypt. So I'll just remind you of the plagues. The first of the plagues was the water turning to blood. And there was a god of the Nile River, Hapi was his name. And this demonstrated Yahweh's power over Hapi. And so Moses confronted Pharaoh by the Nile. And as he confronted him and told him God's desire to let the people go, Pharaoh's heart continued to be hardened. And so it was that Moses took his staff and he struck the waters of the Nile River. And the waters turned blood red, and the people could no longer drink from them anymore, and the fish began to die in the river. And yet still, after all of this, Pharaoh's heart remained hard, and he would not let God's people go. And then the frogs jump out of the river and onto land, and the people come to despise the frogs. And one of the Egyptian gods was Heket, who was portrayed as a frog. And then, of course, we have the gnats and the flies, and the gnats, they might have been lice or mosquitoes. Then these begin to spread disease, and you've got the disease on the livestock, and the cows begin to die. And when we think of the cows beginning to die, we think of Hathor, who was portrayed as a cow. And Hathor is one of the gods most loved by the Egyptian people. But in this case, the cattle are dying. What does that say about God's power over Hathor? Then we have the plague of the boils on the skin, the plague of the hail and fire. We have the plague of the locusts. And then the ninth plague is the plague of darkness. And here I'm reminded that Ramses' name, Ramasu, was really Ra Moses. Ra Moses was son of the sun god Ra, and Moses was just son of nobody. For 3 days, there's complete darkness. Whether it's a dust storm or something else, the sun can't be seen. And once more we see the power of Yahweh, Israel's God, more powerful than even the sun god himself. God has defeated all of the Egyptian gods in these plagues. The last of the plagues is the plague of the firstborn. And every Egyptian household is affected by this plague. The firstborn of every household, the firstborn of every flock are taken by the angel of death that night. But the Israelites are saved. The angel of death passes over them. They quickly hurry and pack their things. There's no time for their bread to rise, and so they eat unleavened bread. And Pharaoh demands they leave the land of Egypt. And they make their way towards what we often think of as the Red Sea. But in fact, in Hebrew, it says is the Reed Sea. Most likely, this was a journey they made south and then finally a bit north, and confronted by a series of lakes that run alongside what's now the Suez Canal. Many of them folded into the Suez Canal when it was built. But they're surrounded on one side by a lake, or the Sea of Reeds. On the other side, Pharaoh sends his armies, his chariots, to go and to take them back as slaves. The Israelites, seeing the dust from Pharaoh's armies coming, they cry out to Moses, "What have you done bringing us out here to die? At least we would have been able to stay alive if we'd stayed back in slavery in Egypt. Why have you brought us here?" And in their fear, Moses comforts them and encourages them and says, "Be strong and don't be afraid, for the Lord our God will deliver us." God tells Moses, "Raise up your hand above the water." And he raises his hand above the water, and the winds begin to blow, the waters begin to part, and the people are instructed to pass through between the waters as though on dry land. And God did his greatest act of delivering his people, one final dramatic act to set them free. It may very well have been in this place. And once on the other side, Pharaoh's armies begin to chase them through the water. And Moses is instructed to bring his arm down, and the waters envelop Pharaoh's armies, and his armies are destroyed. And the Israelites begin to break out in song, "Our God has delivered us." And God has defeated not only Pharaoh, not only Egypt's gods, but God has defeated the most powerful army on the face of the planet as well. And God has delivered his people, Israel. And part of what this reminds us of is that in the end, good is always going to triumph over evil. In the end, God is always going to be the victor. And that act of deliverance for the Israelites was an act of pure grace. They didn't earn it. They didn't do anything for it. God delivered them in that moment, and they were set free. And what God did, delivering them from evil and delivering them and setting them free, God longs to do for us as well. Evil will never have the final word. Hate, sin, suffering, it's never going to have the final word. In the end, God triumphs. Goodness, love, grace, mercy, hope triumphs over darkness, hate, evil, and sin. What was true for the Israelites is true for you.
Well, there you have quickly 10 or more chapters of Exodus in 10 to 15 minutes. I do want to suggest that anybody who's not read those chapters in Exodus take time this week and go back and read them. There's a lot of information there. It was pretty well glossed over. We got the highlights. We didn't even get the Cliff Notes version. So here's some questions that I didn't give you ahead of time. I forgot actually, but that's okay. I think you'll probably remember. So first off, what were the 10 plagues? Anybody remember what the first one was?
Frogs? No, not frogs.
Blood.
That's the second one.
Blood?
Yeah,
Blood.
water turns to blood. By
I
the
was
way,
surprised. I was surprised that Adam Hamilton could turn it to blood too.
yes. Page 83 in your book, if you haven't, if you want to remember, with the topic that they have, and someone had the next one, which was the frogs. So after the water turns blood red, frogs jump out of the water, and then you have the gnats, the lice coming up. What was after that?
Flies.
After the gnats and lice?
Flies.
Or flies. Okay. Then what did the flies cause?
Cattle.
Sick cattle, right? And probably other animals too. And then what happened?
Boils,
Boil.
What?
Mhm.
Okay.
and fire and hail,
Fire,
locust,
right?
darkness, and then the death of the first.
Right. But the darkness was before the deaths. After locusts and before the death was darkness. We don't know how he caused the darkness. It could have been a combination of an eclipse, which the picture showed, or it could have been the typical sandstorms that they have in the region and other places that blot out the sun. And then finally, the death of the firstborn. But before this happened, Moses went to Pharaoh and said, "Let my people go." And what did Pharaoh say?
Not on your life.
And then what did he tell everybody they had to do?
Go find your own straw.
Exactly. So what did the Jewish people do? What did the Hebrew people do?
They got mad at Moses.
They complained to Moses. What did you do to us? Why are you doing
They
this?
always complain.
So
They always complain.
Yeah, they're still complaining.
this is a theme. You see this throughout the Bible, and you see it more than just in the Bible. You see it nowadays. People, you try to do something good for somebody, and what do?
Not good enough.
What happens? It usually is worse before it gets better. In Adam's sermon for today, for this lesson, which was actually August 28th of 2016, he made the comment exactly what I just said, which is you do the right thing and it gets worse before it gets better, but eventually it does get better. He had a very good analogy of a problem that one of his parishioners had. So if you haven't seen that, it's worth watching the 35-minute video. It's online.
My dad says no good deed goes unpunished.
Exactly. I use that line a lot.
Yeah.
So do you think these plagues were naturally occurring, supernatural? Did Moses do it? Did God do it? How did all these plagues come about? Or what were they?
Could have been natural. Some of them?
Have we seen these similar plagues throughout history?
Sure.
We've seen the plagues. We haven't seen them to the extent that they were here.
Yet.
And the red tide is a known phenomenon.
Right, exactly.
Locusts destroying the fields, and the crops are still going on.
And you see a great deal of damage in Africa this year. It's really bad here.
Yep. So all of these plagues have occurred naturally. Whether they all would occur within a few days of each other or a few weeks or months, it's not clear how long this all took. Would be might be pushing towards supernatural or something causing these events. So the Bible, I think, encourages us to believe that God had a hand in having all these natural things occur close enough together to finally get Pharaoh's attention. It says,
I think it's really powerful. This whole thing is really powerful considering what we're going through today. I mean, with the plague that we have now.
Yeah, president.
so I think when you look back all the things we've been through this year, it's been a tough year. So things do happen together. Whether God's causing these, I sure hope to and believe that God is not the one causing these things to occur. But
Well, we could get into a discussion about the free will of creation.
yes, yeah, I think.
But I think what,
Go ahead.
if I might add, I just think what Adam pointed out, as some of the plagues were represented by some of the deities of Egypt, I think that was very powerful to show how God worked against those Egyptian deities, to show that, yes, I am God and I am more powerful than your gods.
Yeah, I thought that was great. So there's a lot of ways, as we know, to read the Bible, and we talked about that at the beginning, and we've talked about it in many other lessons too. There is the maximalist approach, or the strict construction approach, where you believe everything that's written as it's written, to the extent that it's written. Are you having a bird fly around your house there, Michael? Or the wind getting too difficult for you? So there's the maximalist approach, which you could read it exactly, to think that the Bible is exactly historically accurate with all the timelines and all the other information. There's the minimalist approach, in which the stories of Moses aren't really dependent to be considered historical, but more of the idea of a movie based on actual events. So you could say that some of these things were occurring in different ways. Things occurred, and this is the lore that gets passed down generation to generation before it finally gets written down. Or you got somewhere there in between. So, which is the actually based on actual events as opposed to a documentary. Any thoughts on this?
I'm just wondering if we have any idea at all about the time frame of all those 10 things.
Really, in the Old Testament, the thing they can really date most accurately is probably the reign of King David around the year 1000. Adam spoke about 1200 to be the time for the Exodus, which, yeah, some scholars say that too. That would also give about a couple of hundred years for the Israelites to get settled in the land and then ultimately get to the point where King David is the king.
But it certainly would
Yeah.
not be beyond reason to consider this may have taken months for all
Or
these
years?
to occur. Months.
Yeah, but not years.
Well, I mean, it could have been a year, it could have been 2 years.
I'm wondering.
Probably not 10 or 20. If the whole idea of this and the way it's portrayed anyway, to me, is that these were occurring close enough together that it was clear that this was something more than just normal,
Mhm.
and quite a bit worse than normal.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Scott, on that. It didn't stretch out a long time. It stretched out just long enough, and especially with the death of the firstborn, to get to the Herod's heart, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, again, one of my favorite movies, which I think you're going to talk about today, right? Mike?
Well, I actually don't mention the movie at all.
Oh, well, anyway, that's one of my favorite movies, The Ten Commandments, has a really good segment on the plagues and how Pharaoh's son is killed, dies, and that's what the final impetus to say get out of town. He didn't.
I'll see if I can work in the movie in the later sermons, but right now basically I'm preaching on when they're at Mount Sinai, so they're already done with all that.
Oh, okay. Well, I know, but the movie starts early, starts with his birth and works it through. So you've got
Sure.
But Charlton Heston on top of the rock with the staff and putting the staff down towards the water, or touching the water, is one of the most memorable scenes in the movie. It's probably been a few months since I've seen it. I'll have to make sure we see it again soon.
And I just want to know if the body of Elvis Presley is in Memphis there too with Ramesses.
Oh, oh.
Mhm.
That's about the only place I haven't heard about.
Yeah.
You mean where he might be? I thought he still lived. If you come to Las Vegas, he's still alive.
Yeah, he's alive.
Go to any street corner. Well, maybe not now, but in normal times, go to any street corner, you'll find at least one in downtown. So we're moving along to actually where did this occur? I mean, the Red Sea or the Reed Sea. Anybody have a thought on that? I'd never heard about the Reed Sea or anything other than the Red Sea until we started the book and this series.
I think in the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible, there is a footnote that says instead of the Red Sea, you can say Sea of Reeds. And that's I think that's the same way in the Hebrew actually too.
Yeah, and I think that was a point Adam was making. He didn't really talk about it in this video, but in the one that's on the in his sermon, he talks about how shallow that lake was.
Yeah.
And it was the kind of lake that, except where it was dredged for the Suez Canal, you probably could have walked across it without getting your head wet.
It was probably just right enough for the wheels of the chariots that were pursuing them to get stuck.
Right.
I haven't seen it myself for quite some time because it is on a video or DVD thing, and I don't have the equipment to watch it. But I have a book also that I read that a guy went to study it, went to the land, and he can prove. It's in search of the real Mount Sinai, and he can prove he got in, smuggled into the country, and and found that there's actually like a place in that area, in that shallow area, there's a like a plateau, or I forget what the word is, that the wind could very conceivably be blown away, and they literally could walk on dry land.
Mm-hmm.
You think there'd be a big sign there saying that?
But they've got the country blocked off. People can't go in to see it.
Oh,
And they've also got this parade of soldiers over marking the real Mount Sinai, so people can get in.
interesting. Well, we could put a blimp up there with an arrow pointing down.
Well, or a drone. So Moses parts whatever water was there, or the water, or he manages to get his people across, and but it says that the chariots were following. I thought Ramses, or whoever the Pharaoh was, told them they get out. We don't want you here. Leave. Why did he send his chariots after him?
Their workforce was leaving.
Yeah, he tried to get up and said, "Wait, what did I do?
Yeah.
I lost my workers."
Yep.
Come back. I'll give you a straw.
So he sends his chariots out, and it was part of I think it's part of the book. I know I've read about it, where Ramses had a particularly good state-of-the-art chariots. He had the Maserati chariots.
Yeah.
He had the Lamborghini chariots. He had chariots that went really fast. 2 horses with the driver and the spear or archer, and he was able to beat his enemies because he had better chariots. It was sort of like initially the German army had much better tanks than the Americans did. Took a long time for the Americans to have an idea how to use their tanks properly. Well, in this case, took a long time for people to figure out how to get rid of the chariots. Moses figured it out, right?
Yeah.
So Adam talks about the grace of God in this story. So how do you think that works in? Any thoughts?
Say that again.
Grace.
Oh,
The grace of God. The grace of God in this Exodus story.
well, that is the moment of salvation for the Jewish people. And that's what they remember even to this day, especially over during the time of Passover. Just like we remember the death and resurrection of Christ in the Eucharist, Holy Communion.
I think it shows that there's nothing you can do to earn God's grace. It's all from Him, and you just have to accept it and know that it makes us who we are today, living in His grace and His mercy.
Any other thoughts? How about your own story? You don't necessarily have to share it, but think about your own place where God's grace has come into your life.
Well, for me, it was most spectacular just a little over 34 years ago.
I'm sure that has a meaning to at least one other member of the group
The
today.
group here,
I
yeah.
hope she's smiling.
Just smiling.
I'd like to know what you're referring to.
Yeah.
Oh, Mike,
Pardon?
I want you to clarify that.
It was 34 years, just over 34 years ago that I got married to my wonderful wife.
Happy anniversary.
Well, it was June 1st of 1986.
That's great. So think about the Jews and the Exodus and the story of the Passover, and then think about Christmas, as Michael just said. Do you think you would be able to talk to a Jewish friend and explain to them what we believe as Christians and how that relates to what they believe as Jews as far as the Passover?
Well, I have talked with Jewish friends and rabbis before. Yeah, we talk about those things.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that in our next Bible study.
Michael's got a monster behind him.
Actually, I'm in my comfy chair right now.
But when you talk, it pops up.
The shadow behind you is.
I need to get a green screen behind me, so then it would just be perfect all the time.
Yeah, I think that's what you're going to have to do, Michael. So Moses didn't do this all by himself, right? He had help. What was Aaron's role?
Talking for him. Being his mouthpiece.
But who ended up doing all the talking?
Yeah.
So did they do well as a team?
Yeah. You need all the help you can get in life.
Exactly. Sometimes if you can't get it all done yourself, and you probably can't, you'll find at least one or more friends who can work with you, or in this case, a brother.
But there probably was a hiccup during the time of the golden calf.
I believe so.
I liked the paragraph where it said that Moses had Aaron, Miriam, Hur, Joshua, and Caleb. David had Jonathan, Joab, and a number of others at various times during his long life. And Jesus had the 12 disciples. And when Jesus sent his followers out to minister to the multitudes, he sent them in pairs. Paul had Barnabas, and later he had Silas, Timothy, Titus, and Luke. And I was thinking of that when I was reading that, I was thinking at the time that Linda is my Aaron, as she is my extra person. She is the one the first person that God is putting in my life to help me in my ministry.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that's a great relationship, and we're so happy you joined our Bible study, Susan. And thank you, Linda, for inviting her and getting her in with the group. So think about another friend if you have one that might benefit from joining the group, and invite them to join. And hopefully nobody feels like they're being put on the spot, particularly on the Zoom thing. It's kind of, you don't really have to answer. You can just stay on mute if you want. It's a little more intimidating, I guess, in person when you can look at the person and say, yes, it's your turn to answer. But we try not to do that, do we? So I did a little other research. Let me find the right page here and I'll share it with you. Yeah, okay, so let me share this screen. I found a lot of artwork on Moses and Aaron before Pharaoh. Here's one here. Where he turns his staff into the snake.
I wish we had information on how he gained an audience with Pharaoh.
Yeah, it's typically it's kind of hard just to walk in, isn't it, and say, "I want an appointment."
Yeah, I want to speak to the man in charge.
Yeah, it's hard to get their attention.
They sure are white.
Yeah.
Probably had to go through 10 intermediaries before he actually got to him.
Probably so.
So
There's
that
always-
could extend the time frame that this all went on.
There's always somebody at the desk, right, that wants to keep you from gaining entry. The gatekeeper, if you will.
In the movie, he just always walked into the throne room.
Well, that might be okay, because if Pharaoh's daughter raised him, then he would be recognized.
I don't know, with that long white beard he had, I'm not sure.
40 years later? I don't know.
Well, just something to throw out.
So here's the Charlton Heston view of the
Yeah.
of the water being way higher than their heads, twice or three times or 10 times as high as their heads, being parted, and the lightning striking and stuff. Here's another one.
Well,
Yeah,
just wading through the mud doesn't make a very dramatic picture. So,
Right.
That's true.
The book talks about Aaron having standing as an elder and with the Israelites as both their way to get to the Israelite elders when they come in from Sinai the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Try to talk to them about what God told Moses to do, and also about their ability to get in to see Pharaoh was because of Aaron's standing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think most of you know I'm a Civil War scholar, spend a lot of my time reading Civil War and studying the Civil War. And it occurred to me that in reading this about Moses walking in to see Pharaoh, how anybody back in Lincoln's time could just walk into the White House. He would have, there were certain areas that were kept apart, but there's stories of people just walking up into his study when he was in there, because they didn't have the Secret Service yet.
Well, excuse me for interrupting. I was just going to say it's not as nearly as important as the White House, but I can remember driving up to the Capitol, Washington State Capitol, and just walking in.
You used to be able to do that in the U.S. Capitol. You didn't really check in or anything else. You just walked in. Of course, you used to be able to walk on an airplane on the tarmac, right? I can still remember boarding planes, just walking out. They checked your ticket as you walked up, and they had brought the stairs right there, and you walked out, right? And meeting people, you could always go there and meet people. So the world has changed.
my great grandfather, it would have been probably the late it would have been Teddy Roosevelt's time, took a train back to Pennsylvania to visit family and just went on down to Washington, and he went in and met with Teddy Roosevelt.
Wow.
And Linda, do you remember when you and I went to the SeaTac airport one time and went out and met some people getting off the plane? And we didn't even know. We greeted them as they got off the airplane.
It was a fun thing to do back then. We had limited social engagements. but when I left Seattle to move to California. Susan was able to walk onto the plane with me and say goodbye.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So up on the screen is our Moses flyer, and I noticed as I was working on our next flyer that I had left off today. I had chapter 3 actually for September 6th, and it said we were finishing on September 27th, but we're actually going to finish on September 20th. So here is the program. I haven't watched the next 2 sermons, but it looks to me as if there's 3 sermons here that are all going to go together. There's 2 different things going on September 4th and also September 11th of 2016, leading up to the 10 Commandments. So next week we're talking about the 10 Commandments, which is chapter 4. And if you want to watch the videos, I think you probably want to watch at least the 10 Commandments one, if not others, as far as the video sermons. So speaking of our next series, and how the discussion of how we might want to interface with our Jewish friends or other religious friends, we're going to talk about Christianity and world religions. So starting September 27th, we'll have our Zoom meetings doing, and I'm assuming we'll still be doing Zoom meetings. We will do Zoom meetings whether we have a small group in person or not. We will continue the Zoom meetings for people who can't make it in person, and we'll continue doing the YouTube videos so you can watch it afterwards. So it says Zoom with nothing there yet because I haven't opened the new Zoom meeting, but I'm going to have a Zoom meeting for each of these segments, so we don't have the problem we had the last time where we actually ran out of the schedule and the meeting wasn't actually going as the current meeting. So we'll have a new Zoom meeting number for Christianity and world religion starting on September 27th. I will send this material out this week along with our video from today. And this is what the schedule looks like. Did somebody have a question? Okay. So Sheila, this will go out on an email. You can get the attachments, I think. If you can't, we'll make sure you get it.
Okay. Okay.
Up through November 1st. So at some point, if we do go to in-person meetings, and depending on what the schedule is, we may find we're going to have to actually elongate the schedule to cover, because we can't cover as much in the in-person time with all the other things that are going on, getting ready for a service that actually starts when you have to be there when it starts, as opposed to watching your convenience 10 minutes or 15 or an hour or a day later, like we've been doing with our current sermons. So the one thing to keep in mind about this, and I did get to watch the videos this week that are part of this series, is it's really not an in-depth study of these religions. It's not intended to be. What it's intended to be is a compare and contrast between Christianity and these other religions. So he's going to hit the high points of what the religions believe and how they worship, and talk about the differences between that and Christianity. So, and then he's going to talk about Christianity, and there's a lot of different parts of Christianity, obviously. No one part of Christianity is exactly the same as another part. Just like in some of these other religions, they all aren't uniform. So I thought it's very interesting. I've finished the book. I did watch the video, so I'm really excited about this. It's something we talked about doing a year ago, but we didn't, and so I think now's a great time to do it. Any questions on this? The book is available on Amazon and at Cokesbury. And I believe Jennifer has some books for some people. And if for any reason you're not able to get your own, please get a hold of Jennifer. She will get a book available for you.
Be very, very glad to do it.
And we appreciate it. Thank you so much. Elaine, you've got a friend in your face.
It's my favorite cat.
How many cats?
Just one.
Oh, well, that's a good reason for him or her to be your favorite.
For sure.
She might talk.
I would like to take a minute to thank publicly David and Barbara and everyone who made Michael's birthday this week such a special time for him. Thank you for loving my husband and taking such good care of him up there. I appreciate you all very, very much.
So what I want to know is, how was the cake when you shared the cake with everybody?
And you're certainly welcome.
Well,
We told people if they came by 9 o'clock, they could get a piece to take home with them, but nobody showed up. So Michael took half of the cake home with him.
and I'm sad to report that the cake that I took is now gone.
Yeah. That's
I
not
was looking for
truthful.
the piece yesterday morning, and somebody must have come by and eaten the big chunk that was left, Barbara.
It was not a big piece.
And Pastor Michael's not being truthful. He's not sorry that it's all gone.
I think he was bragging that it's all gone.
Agreed.
Michael,
Well, it was good.
so you're starting a new sermon series today. Do you want to talk about it for a minute?
Yeah, I found that I had this other book too, based on Stanley Hauerwas and Will Willimon. Stanley Hauerwas was my Christian ethics professor when I was at Duke, and his class probably had the most impact on me of any of the classes I took there. And so, and they've collaborated on a couple of other books. You might have, I think their first book was Resident Aliens, and then they did Where Resident Aliens Lived. That book is the concept of that our citizenship is really in heaven. It's not in this world. We're just sojourners. And so we need to act a certain way in our life. So the 10 Commandments is the same thing. How is it that, to live them out in our daily living? And of course, the first one today, the first commandment is about, as I had titled the sermon, No God But Me.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, the sound quality for this sermon is not as good as it's been. And we're going to be working on that this week to get that back to where it should be.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
We do have a new camera on order, but it's out of stock. I don't know when it's scheduled to come back in. I think they said end of the month.
I think the end of the month, and hopefully the new camera would make me look a lot younger.
Well, there's a line in a movie, and you guys will probably remember the movie when the director says, "Get in close," and then the yells, "Not that close." I know what that movie was.
I don't remember.
Tootsie.
Oh,
Dustin Hoffman was dressed up as a lady, Tootsie, and when he got in close, you could see the makeup, the heavy makeup to cover up the very dark beard he had. The beard was shaved, but it was still had dark hair. So anyway, you don't want to. You'll have to watch how you zoom.
Yeah.
All right, so I did some little research on some music for today, for this session, and the guide recommends How Firm a Foundation, which is 529. And then I found another one, 586, excuse me. Let My People Seek Their Freedom. That was a hymn I never heard. But I found another one that I really like. Actually, we sang this with the Red Mountain Choir the last time, I think, or maybe it was the time before, I can't remember. So we've got two different versions of Go Down Moses to play. One is a Louis Armstrong one, which is very unique. Yes. And I think you'll enjoy that. And then I found another one by another black gospel singer. And if you do Google YouTube Go Down Moses, you'll find a dozen different versions, and there's some wild ones, really wild. So I think you'll enjoy the music. Stay around if you want to hear. I'll play both of those. They're long. It's probably about 15 minutes worth of music. I'll probably have to scratch those off of the YouTube video so we don't get a copyright issue, but that's not a problem. You can enjoy it, and I'll put the links on so people can see what the links were at least. So thank you very much. We'll see everybody next week. We're doing chapter 4, and we'll close with this prayer. God of Exodus, we give thanks for your saving grace. Go with us now as you have promised. Continue to abide with us, and your Spirit make your presence known. Please be with us during this time, all these difficult times we are going through. Keep us ever more aware of how we may how we may be part of your redemption story. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
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 Thank you,
Thank
Scott.
you, Scott.
Jennifer, could you please get a book for me?
It will be in the mail tomorrow morning, Susan.
Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am. Glad to do it.
Hi, I'm Brad Callen, and in this video, I'm going to show you how anyone can quickly and easily create doodle videos, just like...
I don't think I did anything. What happened here? Sorry about that.
Go down, Moses. When Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand. Let my people go down, Moses, way
everybody still online or not? Anybody still here? Rick's still here. Toddy's still here. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.